Hello everyone, welcome to session 5 of module 4, experience-based testing techniques. In this session we will learn about two experience-based testing techniques and see what are the advantages and disadvantages of those testing techniques. So let's get started with experience-based testing techniques. So we have seen that it's in the testing, we have seen in previous sessions that testing should be rigorous, thorough, and systematic. We have seen quite a few systematic testing techniques as well, but this is not all about software testing. There are some non-systematic approaches which are very useful and beneficial while you are doing the testing. So non-systematic testing, for example, the testing done by the person's knowledge or experience also plays a very important role. So if a person is working in certain domain for quite a long time, he knows about the domain in and out very thoroughly. So that person will be a, a best person who can do very uh, kind of very nice experience-based testing, rigorous experience-based testing, and find the defects which are difficult to find through the systematic testing approach. So that is why experience-based testing technique is very important. So reason for this is that some defects are kind of very hard to find by systematic approach, and a person who has good domain expertise, who has good experience with testing the softwares and knows the basic architecture, how the software is deployed in the environment, how the communication happens. If he knows all those details, then he is a kind of good bug hunter who can find defects with his previous experience. So we'll discuss two experience-based techniques in this session. What are those techniques? First one is error guessing, and the second one is exploratory testing. So let's get started with the error guessing first. So this is a test design technique where the experience of a tester is used to find the components of software where defects might be present. So in error guessing, it's just the experience of a tester which is used to find the components where the errors might be present in the software. So it is mostly done by experienced testers who can use their past experience, skills, and intuition to find defects in software. So this is mostly done by the experienced testers who have already tested similar kind of applications in past and can utilize that prior experience to test the current software, because since they have already tested that kind of software previously, they know where they found the most errors in previous releases or previous versions of the software. So they have a fair bit of idea which modules to focus more on and where the defects would be present based on their skills, intuitions, or the prior experience. Error guessing has no rules for testing. It only uses testers' previous skills. So error guessing is just has no rules. It just uses tester's previous experience, and he's the sole responsible person for designing the test or finding the modules which he wants to test and where he wants to focus more, because it is because of his experience he knows where to work more or which module to focus more and where the defects might be present in the software. Error guessing is not a replacement of formal testing. It should be used to complement other formal testing. So informal testing is not a replacement to a formal testing. So error guessing is an informal technique. It should not be replaced by the formal testing techniques. It's just done to complement formal testing. So error guessing is not a replacement of formal testing. You should not be doing just error guessing and saying that quality of the software is fine. So after formal phase of testing, informal phase of testing needs to be done to complement the formal phase, that to make sure that everything that an experienced user, experienced tester can figure out as the vulnerable modules or areas where defects might occur. If he finds that there are no defects around those areas, then you can say yes, the quality of software is good. So formal and informal testing both should complement each other. So what are the advantages and disadvantages of error guessing? So let's go ahead and see the advantages first. So error guessing is used to complement systematic testing techniques. It is not a replacement of systematic testing techniques. It's just to complement systematic testing techniques. Then it is used to identify special tests which can be easily found by other testing, which cannot be easily found by other formal testing techniques. So the other advantage of error guessing is that it identifies those tests which cannot be easily found by other formal testing techniques. So because with other formal testing techniques, you have certain test design techniques which you apply to find out the test cases that you can execute on the module or the software. But with the error guessing, it's the experienced tester's knowledge, skill, and his prior experience on the software and modules where he found most number of defects that is used to identify the test cases. So these test cases come out from the user's experienced tester experience and not from any specific technique. So these test cases are just an add-on or an advantage on the formal test cases, formal test design test cases that are developed initially. What are the disadvantages of error guessing? So error guessing is not structured and not systematic. That's the first disadvantage. So it's not a structured approach or not systematic approach. And the success and effectiveness of error guessing depends on the person's skills and expertise who is doing the error guessing technique or error guessing testing. So it will be most successful when a person who has prior experience of working in similar kind of software and has kind of domain expertise in that area. So a person who has expertise in that domain or in those kind of software would be able to do more effective error guessing rather than a person who doesn't have any understanding or prior experience in that domain. So success basically depends on the skills and experience of the tester. So let's see some of the error guessing test cases. What kind of test cases can be thought of in error guessing techniques? So these are just general test cases. So for example, division by zero. So anywhere if there is a mathematical calculation, you can check the division by zero in error guessing test cases. Then pressing submit button on the form without filling any entries. That's another kind of test which comes from the experienced user. And if he has prior experience in the domain, he might be aware of the different modules and areas where he can do such kind of tests. Then entering wrong data, sorry about the typo here, entering wrong data in the fields and checking software behavior. So you can check the module where you can enter the wrong data and see the negative, what the outcome of the what the behavior of the software is. Then having null in the mandatory fields or entering reserved characters in web forms. If you enter the reserved characters, special characters in the web forms and hit submit, what's the outcome, whether it breaks or its exception is handled properly, what's the outcome there. Then entering codes in data input fields. So these are some of the error guessing tests that a user, whosoever is doing error guessing testing, can use it as an input. So approach to design error guessing tests. So if somebody says for the software that could never happen, always consider that scenario in error guessing test. So whenever there is an argument or there is a discussion in the team which says that this scenario is rarely gonna happen, or end user might never do this kind of stuff. For example, end user might never submit a blank form, might never click on submit button without entering his details, or end user will never enter special characters or never try to inject some script in the web form that you have displayed, that is displayed on the website or on the application website. So in that kind of discussion or in that type of scenarios, you should always consider those scenarios as your test cases in error guessing. If somebody says this is never gonna happen, end user will never do this, that's your test case. So you should always consider those scenarios in error guessing tests. So if it is discussed nobody is going to enter special characters in the text boxes in his personal details and hit submit, that's your test case. Somebody says nobody will hit submit without entering his personal details, that's another test case. So you should consider these kind of scenarios in error guessing. Then structured approach of error guessing can be followed, which is to create a list of possible errors and then design test cases to reproduce those errors. So it's not always true that you cannot follow a structured approach for error guessing. You can follow a structured approach, but it will not be in much detail. You can just create a list of possible errors and then design test cases to reproduce those errors. So for example, the errors that can happen on this web form, on this form that is displayed on application website, and then you can go ahead and design the test cases to reproduce those errors and see what the outcome is. If the outcome is right, okay, then your test passes. If the outcome is wrong, then your test fails. So tester can use his experience and skills to build list of possible errors. So tester can use his experience or skills to build the possible errors. For example, submitting form with all customer data field blank, or entering future date as DOB, date of birth for customers. So customers date of birth cannot be a future date, so you can try entering future date as date of birth for customer and see what happens. So let's understand the second testing, that is exploratory testing. So exploratory testing is another experience-based testing, and is a hands-on approach in which testers are involved in minimum planning and maximum test execution. So in experience-based testing there is minimum or no planning at all. So it's the maximum test execution that happens in exploratory testing or in error guessing. As testers do minimum planning and maximum execution of the software, they get in-depth idea about the software functionality. Once the tester starts getting insight into the software, he can make decisions on what to test next. As in error guessing, we were having very experienced users. So similarly, in exploratory testing as well, a person with more experience is more effective in finding defects, or if he has good domain expertise, he'll be able to find more issues by doing exploratory testing. And since exploratory testing has minimum planning and maximum execution, so once the tester starts doing the execution, he starts getting an idea about the software, he starts getting insight about the software, and then once he is comfortable, once he has an idea about the software, he can make decisions what to test next, which module to test next in the software. Then in exploratory testing, tester focuses more on how the software actually works. So in exploratory testing, the focus of the tester is to find how the software really works. The test design and test execution activities are performed in parallel without creating much test documentation. So in exploratory testing, very very less documentation is done, just kind of one-liner kind of test cases, and these test design activities are performed in parallel while the tester is doing the testing or is learning about the software. So test logging is undertaken as test execution is done. Key aspects of testing, any further testing required, and defects are documented. So test logging is done as the test execution is going on. So suppose the tester is testing a certain module, he finds some issues, he just logs that issues in a notepad or any Word document. And then any key aspects of testing, any further testing required in that module, if he finds that this module is kind of vulnerable and has many defects, so if he can plan future testing, further testing for specific to that module, and plan that, so that all those aspects are listed, and any defects are also documented as the test execution is going on. So some notes are made by testers during exploratory testing to produce test report. So once the exploratory testing is going on, tester keeps making the notes of what he has done, which module he has covered, what defects were found, any further testing required. So all these details are being documented while he is doing the testing in order to produce test execution report in after the end of exploratory testing. And exploratory testing is mostly performed by skilled testers who have good experience and expertise in the domain. Exploratory testing is mostly used if the requirements are incomplete and time to release the software is less. So exploratory testing is most useful if the requirements that are being given to the developers are kind of incomplete, or time to release the software is very less. You have to release the software in 15 days, and you don't have time to document, to follow all that formal approach to test each and every module of the software. So in that kind of situations, exploratory testing is done to make sure that all the basic functionality and all the important functionality that end user will always use is working fine, and all the modules are intact. So advantages and disadvantages of exploratory testing. It is very useful when there is little or no specification documentation. So suppose there is very less specification documentation or no specification documentation, you cannot go ahead and document the formal test cases. So if there is no documentation at all, you are left with exploratory testing. Exploratory testing is the only way to do the testing in that case. It is very useful when there are severe time pressures. So if the time pressure is high, you want to release the software in 15-20 days, and you don't have time and resources to do the formal testing, the test planning and execution, then exploratory testing is very useful. And then it complements other formal testing, helping to establish more confidence in software. So it should not, mostly it should not be, kind of just a separate testing approach. It should be, like once you are done with the formal testing, should complement that. So exploratory testing complements other formal testing. So if you also have followed formal testing approach, exploratory testing will complement your previous formal testing approach to establish more confidence in your software. Then it assists tester to learn about software quickly. So because of exploratory testing, the tester learns about the software because he uses the software end to end. He uses all the modules of the software, so he is able to learn about the software end to end module very quickly. Because in formal approach, there is a team of software testers who focus on their specific modules which are assigned to them to test them, and then in integration phases they focus on just the integration of modules which they are responsible for. So exploratory testing helps tester to learn the whole software quickly because they use the software end to end and all the modules of software rather than focusing on specific module of the software. Then it also helps ensure that most serious defects are found because exploratory testing figures out all the end user scenarios, end to end scenarios, and its focus is to cover all the modules of the software, so it ensures that most serious defects are being found and none of the serious defects exist. And it is good to get rapid feedback about the software quality. So once exploratory testing starts, since all the software is integrated, it's ready to go live, then once you are doing exploratory testing, it gives a fair bit of idea and feedback about the quality of software, how the software looks like. Then what are the disadvantages? It is not scripted or structured. That's another disadvantage. And it mostly relies on the skills of testers to carry out testing. So that's another disadvantage, that the tester has to have good skills, good domain knowledge to carry out the testing. And since there is no scripted approach, so it is pretty unstructured. So to conclude, in this session we'll learn about experience-based testing techniques, we'll learn about error guessing and exploratory testing. Then we saw advantages and disadvantages of error guessing. Then we saw approach to design error guessing tests. What should be your approach to design error guessing tests? If somebody says that this will never happen, always consider that as your test in error guessing technique. Then we saw advantages and disadvantages of exploratory testing. Thank you.